Hello and welcome to the Skilled Workers Get Jobs QuickBite. Today we're going to continue part of our series of being inviting to all students, and it really is talking about engaging your students in your assignments, or you might have a different name for it. I really could not come up with a good title for this presentation. But have you ever planned an activity that did not engage everyone in your class, or seen the rolled eyes when you give an assignment? As teachers, we often like to teach how we were taught to, which works well if we have several clones following behind us. But if we're teaching to a unique group of students, we want to make sure that we're engaging all of them. I really want to encourage you to look at the resources from NCWIT.org. They're a federally funded resource center, not their official name, but what they do is they have a lot of information on how to make sure you're inviting to all students in your classroom and give a lot of practical suggestions. I'm going to share a couple of those today. First of all, you have to look at differences of engagement. And a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is when you're teaching STEM, specifically technology and engineering classes that maybe are predominantly male in the classroom, with a small number of females. A lot of how we teach has been geared towards the male population, and I'm going to give suggestions for how to engage all students. You do want to remember that each student is unique, and what happens or is true for one student isn't necessarily true for the other. But a lot of times we design activities that are competitive. An example of this is I teach hardware classes, and I've had the first student who makes a network cable will get 10 bonus points added to their score. That doesn't work for some students. Instead, you want a collaborative approach, such as our goal by the end of class is that everyone has a successful network cable. So you want to make it a team activity. The next two items are really about the technology. A lot of people will just add more RAM to the computer because it is a really good thing to add more RAM to your computer, but a lot of people will want to know why you're doing it. When I teach hardware and have students add more memory, I have them do benchmarks before they add it, see how long it takes programs to load, have different tasks that they measure the speed. They add more memory, they do the same benchmarks, so they see why they're doing it, not just doing it because it is using the technology. And when you teach, you don't only want to say how to use the technology, but how will the technology help others? If you're teaching someone how to do a database, give examples of how people would use it in real life. NCWIT provides a lot of different 10 ways brochures. I'm giving you a few points that I've gleaned from different ones of their brochures. And first of all, think about your physical environment. Right now we're teaching online, but if it's online or physical, do all students have equal access to what you're doing? And this might be what I do in my virtual classes is I have students put in that they have a question in the chat room so I can ensure I'm calling on everyone equally. If you're teaching a automotive class and you're demonstrating how to do an oil change, have you set things up so all students can see what you're doing inside the car? Or do you just tell everyone, get to the front? A shy student who's maybe shorter isn't going to feel comfortable pushing their way to the front of the class. Think about the projects you assign. The best example I can give of humanizing a project is when we were teaching a networking class and students were assigned to network a building. The original project really was that simple. Here's a floor plan, plan your network for it. That engages students who just are into doing the task. But for people who want to know why, we added a story to the project. It was that Bill and Sally Smith had relocated to Asheville, North Carolina to open their flip-flop factory. If you've been to Asheville, you'd know that is appropriate. And we put names on the offices and we said, like, they need a wireless network and able to enable the salespeople to access the network when they come to the office. So we just added reasons of why they were doing it, and overall student satisfaction with the project went up for all students. So humanize your projects. The next two items go really hand in hand, and that's that students who are unsure if they belong in a program often perceive that they're doing poorly even when they're not. Many years ago, I had a student come in, her name was Kim, and she said, Pam, I think I need to change my major. I just took an operating system class test and I blew it. I need to find a different major. Well, I sat down and we talked a bit, and I said, Kim, out of curiosity, what grade did you get? She got a 92, and she was going to switch majors because she didn't think she did well enough. And this was out of a 100-point test. Students who are unsure if they belong in a place, and this is often where there are only one or two of a certain group, are going to think that they're not doing as well. So you want to make sure that you let students know that what they're doing is correct. And the other is students often need encouragement. Students who are doing poorly, we often give a lot of feedback. But what do you put on a paper for a student who has done a great job? Do you do like I have in the past of great job, nice work? That doesn't let students know what they're doing well. I was teaching an online Excel class a few years ago, and I really realized that my students who were doing poorly were getting lots of feedback on the assignments. But students who were doing everything right were just getting that nice work and good job. So I sat down in Word and wrote out an email and thought of why they were doing well. They were handing it in on time, they were doing formulas correctly, they were paying attention to the order of operations. So I wrote an email and I did send it to each student individually, although it was basically the same email saying, I really want to know, I appreciate having you in the class. Your work is always enjoyable to grade because, and those just list of what I had. I did adjust it if needed for an individual student. Out of the 7 students I heard from, or sent it to, 5 of them sent me something back saying thanks, and 4 of them said, I had no idea how I was doing in the class. Now, I would have thought that not missing any points would have let them know they were doing really well, but students do need encouragement, especially if they're going into an unfamiliar or non-traditional field. The other is think about the language or jargon for your discipline. Every discipline has it. And my colleague who teaches civil engineering realized one day he just mentioned rebar in passing in an intro class. And a student came up afterwards and goes, I don't know what this rebar is. Maybe I'm in the wrong major. Now he brings in a piece of rebar. He mentions what it is and says they'll be discussing it more in future classes. He doesn't ask, does everyone know what rebar is? Or raise your hand if you don't know what it is. That's going to have a student have to be singled out. Instead, he just includes it in his description. I recently had a guest lecture for a web class, and this was the first semester, first 3 weeks of the semester, so students were just getting into the curriculum. And as the person came in, some of the samples of words he was using were SEO, back-end development, front-end development, validator, CSS, and GitHub. This was all in the course of a 1-hour presentation. Now, I would 100% expect second year or maybe even second semester students know it, but as he was talking, I just would stop and say, now SEO, am I right that you're referring to search engine optimization? Or I ask the question, what's the difference between front and back end development? The students in their feedback to me, which I give after we have a guest speaker, 2 or 3 of them said, thank you for asking for the clarifications. I thought I maybe should know it and wasn't in the right major. So terms that we use all the time could be unfamiliar to students who are new to the program. Anyone who has listened to one of my presentations knows I love to end it with a quote, and I think that this is one that isn't necessarily inspirational, but it is a chuckle for me and hopefully for you. And it said, they started the meeting out by saying, everyone please take your seats. I was halfway back to my cubicle with mine before they stopped me. Person knew what they were talking about, but an attendee, in this case, pretended that they did not know what they were talking about. This presentation was provided by the Skilled Workers Get Jobs 2.1 High School Engagement NSF ATE grant. The opinions and items presented are the opinions of the PI and co-PIs and do not represent the National Science Foundation. If you have any questions or if you have suggestions for future Quick Bites, please email us. Thank you.